Hi, and welcome back to another episode with I'm Saga Stephen with Floridian Future. And boy, are we going to have a fun show today. Dr. Joel Rudman, who is a former Florida House representative, is with us. And one of the many things I love about Dr. Rudman is we can talk about the shenanigans going on in Tallahassee from his perspective, which is more behind the scenes. So, and I may call you Joel. So, Joel,
Absolutely.
let's get started with this because boy, have there been shenanigans this past couple weeks. It has been unbelievable. We got the governor race going. We've got endorsements being thrown around. We've got all kinds of just crazy going. So what have you been noticing? Because it's been fun from my perspective. It's got to be a blast from yours.
Oh, well, Saga, listen, thanks for having me. And this is interesting because I'm used to running my own podcast and I've got to remember I'm the guest here. So this is kind of neat to be back on the other side. I haven't been on the other side in about 2 years. But yeah, I got to be honest with you. It goes back to what I said when I originally resigned from the Florida House of Representatives back in January of 25. I warned people then that there was a civil war brewing within the Republican Party. And I
Oh,
think you're actually seeing that here in 2026. The cracks that were obvious to me in the Florida House of Representatives at the time, I think now they're laid open for the whole world to see. At the time, there were people like myself, people who wanted nothing to do with government. A lot of us, Saga, we were swept into government because of the COVID regulations and how government had really turned very brutal and had turned very kind of militaristic, if you will, during the COVID era. So there were a lot of us representatives. Hey, we were loyal Republicans, but we were more kind of anti government. We certainly weren't big government in the least. But, we kind of hit hard up against these Republicans that I call them country club Republicans.
yeah.
They're like your Bob Dole era Republicans. They're the people that have, look, I'm a party apparatchik. I've paid my dues for 30 years. It's my time. And I think you're seeing those two forces come head to head. You're seeing the new wave of Republicans who are like, do your business,
Yeah.
get out because we hate it here. And then you have your old entrenched, kind of your crony capitalists, if you will, your crony Republicans, your people who are like, well, that was my daddy. So now it's my right to be your county commissioner, or it's my right to be your senator, and as a Republican all my life, Saga, I'm not into anointing people. I'm not
No,
into coronations. I think that belongs to the voters, not
right.
to party apparatchiks. I don't like when we have Evan Power, who's the head of the Florida GOP,
And won't
running,
have a debate.
won't have a debate. And not only that,
Yeah.
he's running for an office.
Which is
So
really insane.
against other Republicans. So who do you think he's going to throw the weight of the RPOF behind?
Right.
Himself, obviously. So, in my opinion, we are seeing this civil war play out in front of us.
Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on that you had mentioned is like when you got in because you had the heart of my assumption, you had the heart of a Floridian who wanted to help Floridians, who wanted to help citizens. It wasn't to further your career because you were a doctor. You actually sacrificed quite a bit in serving and you truly served the people. You were not there for personal gain or for, yeah, I'm going to go and I want to be this and that and the other in the political world. You were there to serve the people and take care of the people. And I think that's one of the many reasons why you were such a beloved rep. Because I know you remember this when you were like, I was like, no, Joel, please don't leave us. Don't leave the house. I was
Every
begging you.
day.
I was begging you, please don't. We
You
need
were.
representation there.
You were.
Yeah. And of course, everything is in God's hands and God works everything for the best. So I'm glad you're on this side helping us to understand more. And it's like, I mean, I've even talked to people that I'm like, okay, so what, prompted you to run? And it was like, well, I got asked to run. And it's like, really? And oh yeah, well, they said, if I got in, basically it's just do what we say and we'll get you in. And I'm
Right.
like, that's horrible.
I
And
know.
yeah, and there's those games and the packs and all this that politics is a dirty business, and it's a dirty business because of that. And we need more people whose heart is in it and whose heart is to serve. And it's like when, what was it, last year or year before, when all the House, everybody was like going totally against DeSantis. And it's like, are you people out of your mind? You're not representing me. And there was a lot of other constituents that were not, I don't feel, getting represented. And so now, and again, I'm in the grassroots world, and I've been in the trenches with people, and it was like being in the trenches with you when you were there. It's like, okay, Joel, this is what we have, help us with
Right.
this. And you're like, yeah. And that goes back to, and I really want to do a little bit of a focus on this as far as endorsements go, as far
Yeah.
as, because it's like when, oh, I don't know if I should say this or not. Oh, why not? It's kind of like, why not, right? When Grady, I love Grady. I love Sheriff Grady. And
Right.
the thing is, he comes out immediately and endorses Byron Donalds. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is like not a lawful person. And my first thought was like, okay, there's got to be some kind of something going here. And then I'm like, okay, well, he also endorsed Putnam in 2018 instead of DeSantis. And I mean, he was just one, but all of a sudden, all these people endorsing Byron, and you've got the governor going like, no, Byron hasn't done anything. And again, from the perspective of somebody being in the trenches with people, it's like even some of my reps that I really, really have all the, due respect for, have come out, and it's like, I don't understand. I don't understand where this is coming from. So can you help
Yeah.
me more from, like, when you were a rep, were you approached and bribed, if you will, to endorse, or, hey, I'll do this for you if you do this for me? Because I know that, like, working my bills, there's a lot of corporations that are spending a lot of money
Oh
to
yeah.
buy a seat at the table. So if you could
Oh
talk to
yeah.
us a little bit about that from your perspective.
I'd be happy to, Saga. First of all, there's a couple things you mentioned earlier that I want to hit upon. You know, first of all, thank you for the very kind words. And yes, it was always a source of encouragement for me to see your responses to my tweets every morning, just, telling me what a great job I was doing. So thank you very much for that. Um, not only, like, say, I will say one thing about my service. Not only was it not for my own self interest, Saga, I've actually testified on behalf of bills that actually hurt me personally. I was up there, even when I resigned from office, I was up here testifying in favor of a bill that made it easier for you to sue me for malpractice. Now, who does this, right? But Simon,
Right.
to me, it was a case of right versus wrong. There are currently Floridians that are not allowed to sue for malpractice, even in obvious cases. And
Mm,
I just thought that was wrong. So not only are you not supposed to work in your self-interest, you're supposed to work for the best case for all Floridians,
right.
which is what I always try to do. And that's the best example I can give. Now, when you're talking about elected representatives and when we first get there, first of all, I'm like you. I like to give all credit where it's
Mhm.
due. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And so I'd like to think, Saga, that when we all get there, because I believe I was part of a class of, I think, of about maybe 28 new representatives. So I'd like to believe that we all arrived with the best of intentions. And
Mhm.
and I seriously do think that. I mean, I saw people whose priorities changed in front of me, or at
Oh.
least they seemed to change. So I'd like to think that when we all got there, I'd like to think that we were all determined to do the right thing for Florida. And of course, most of us were Republican. We're good, honest, loyal Republicans. So I truly believe that when people first arrive in Tallahassee, I truly believe that their hearts are in the right place. But another important distinction that you brought up that I want to stress, like you said, for someone like me, I was a political outsider. I still have the newspaper clipping from when I first announced my candidacy here in Santa Rosa County. The newspaper clipping, it just simply says, Doctor enters the race. I mean, nobody knew who I was. I wasn't a politician. I had never run for public office before. And so, there is this sense that all 28 of us arrived wanting to do the right thing. But at the same time, Saga, I realized quickly because I thought the other 27 people were just like me.
Right.
They all needed advice on, hey, where's the bathroom? Here's how this works. Here's where your office is. So I just assumed we were all newbies and had nothing nothing to base our experience on. We were all learning from scratch. And then as you get to meet people, you discover, oh, wait, they're a former county commissioner. So this was their next step up. Oh, wait, their father served in the House of Representatives. Oh, wait, they're best friends with Kathleen Passidomo, the Senate president. So I quickly learned that no, we're not all made equal. Even though you'd like to believe there's 27 newbies and we're all in it for the right reason. You know, one of my best friends there was a lawyer who was in the same class as me. And when I got to know this lawyer, I realized, hey, wait, she's been an advocate up here in Tallahassee for many years. So yeah, even though the office is new to her, she knows where the bathrooms are. She knows where the committee meetings take place. She knows, whose palms need to get greased or whatever. So it's amazing how we all think, oh, we elected a fresh face. We're going to start from scratch. Do your research, folks, because let me tell you, if they're a lobbyist, like Evan Power, for example, running
Mhm.
for Congress in District 2, they're a lobbyist. If they're a real fierce advocate, sometimes on the wrong side of the argument, hey,
Yeah.
look, it's just like electing an incumbent. They know the drill. They know whose votes are more powerful than others. So again, just do your research, folks. Like I said, when you say you want a fresh face, you really want a fresh face. And sometimes, Saga, sometimes that's scary. You
Well,
know,
it is, but it's like, you said, well, they get their palms greased. And I guess I'm very naive in a lot of ways.
Mm,
So I, because I have a very black and white opinion of what is right and what is wrong. It's wrong to
exactly.
steal. It's wrong to lie. It's wrong, different things like that. And to me, it's hard for me to get my head wrapped around somebody that is going to vote on a law that affects 23 million people, and they're going to vote so that they make money on it, not whether it's good for the people or not.
Can
And
you can you imagine, Saga,
it
how I
happens all the
felt in
time.
Yeah, all the time. I was there voting on a bill that had to do with what I thought was child safety, right? So there's a bill, you probably remember it, about the school buses, how now the school buses have cameras equipped so that when it's driving down the highway and the signs come out to stop, they can now film cars that are, swerving by the buses, putting lives in jeopardy. And it sounds like a great bill, right? I mean, that's how the bill was proposed. We don't want kids getting run over on the rural highways. And then imagine my surprise after the bill is passed. I found out that one of the bill's strongest advocates actually has a son whose job is to sell those cameras for the
Of
buses.
course.
And guess who gets the contract for
Right.
those buses? So, like you say, right is right, wrong is wrong. And whenever you have self interest involved in your bills, that is 100% wrong. You've
Well,
got to get the self interest out of politics.
yeah. And I also understand that there are a lot of really good people in there, really good reps in there, and they get somebody coming to them and they don't know a lot about that issue.
Yeah,
So they're sold something that they may not realize. And I'm going to go back to HB 1311 that got passed. It started out like, oh, yeah, Florida's going to declare gold and silver legal tender. Sounds fair. Sounds okay. And then all of a sudden it turns into this 36-page, and this is
yeah,
one of those things I'm a watchdog on, turns into this 36-page boondoggle. And I am begging everyone I know, please don't, please don't. Yes, we need to do that. This is not the
right.
way to do that. So in any event, now it's passed. And I was begging then for the governor to veto it, which he did not. So now what that bill does is if you are a small mom and pop shop in Florida and you sell gold and silver coins, you are now going to be treated the same as a banker and have annual audits, which the state of Florida has to create this whole new division to go audit these people. You're going to have to onboard all of your clients to sell gold and silver coins. You are going to be, it's all these again, it's super over regulation. And it's like basically what it's going to do is wipe out 20,000 small businesses.
Wow.
And it's like seriously. And here's the kicker. I worked with the guys out there promoting this, and I said, look, guys, all you need is 2 paragraphs. And I came up with 2 paragraphs. Here you go. I didn't realize the enormity of the self-interest they had to put in this bill so that they can get, the credit card and all this other kind of stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? They're selling Floridians down the river, and these poor mom and pop businesses that are just selling gold and silver coin to normal Floridians now are going to be all under all this scrutiny. But I do understand that now it has to go through rules and all these other committees. So I'm going to learn about that now and see what we can do. But it's just awful.
It
And again,
is.
the person that sponsored this, I'm sure he was snookered. I'm sure he was totally snookered by these people because he didn't know he was a pastor.
Right,
So,
right. One of my good buddies, actually, he's a good rep, Representative Bankson. Great
yes,
guy.
yeah, exactly. And then I
And
was calling back going, no. And all of a sudden it's like not him, but his aide got all miffed. And I was like, I'm telling you, this is not good. But in any event.
So Doug is one of the good ones. I love Doug, but no, you're right. Sometimes your bills become these grotesque abnormalities, far removed from their
Yeah.
original intention.
Well, it's like the lobbyists come in and no, you need to put this language in there, need to put this language in there. And it's like,
not to toot my own horn, but I've been in that situation before. Probably the most famous situation where I was in that predicament was with my medical freedom bill, my medical conscience bill that passed my first term. That was a bill that we pretty much crafted without any outside interference. This is, let's ask the doctors, what is it we need? Boom, had it written. And then as we're making tremendous progress, as we're getting to the point of getting this bill passed through the House, the lawyers get involved. The lawyers come in and they say, hey, here's what we think it ought to look like. And so I get handed a draft of my own bill. And like you say, it's turned from a nice little, I forget what it was. My bill is probably 11 pages. I don't think I have many bills over, 8 pages. This one might have been an 11-page one. And then it turns into this mockery. It turns into like a 30-something page bill. And I just threw it in the trash. I said, I am not running that. I'm running my bill. And if it fails, it fails. And if you want to take that mockery, if you want to take that to another rep and let's go mano a mano, let's do it. But I am not running a lawyer bill. I am running a doctor bill. So yeah, special interests do try to get involved. Now, on the other hand, I can give you an example where I went along. I had a bill that I loved. I still think we need it. It never passed, but it's the bill protecting our currency. It's our bill that says, look, if you go buy a hot dog at a hot dog stand and you have a $5 bill, that vendor can't refuse American currency.
You and I are on the same page there.
Sandra, right now, I've got a wallet full of about $400 in cash because, I withdrew a lot of money for the 4th of July holiday. And where I was for the 4th of July, no one took cash. I would go play tennis. We don't take cash. I'd go get a grilled cheese sandwich. We don't take cash. So I had a bill that said every vendor would need, there's no way they can refuse American bills.
I remember that bill.
I had special interests come and see me. I had people like Universal Studios Florida. I had people like Disney. They said, well, look, in some places it's just not feasible. What if we have like an ATM, like a reverse ATM where, you can get your money back or whatever? And I said, look, however you need to make it happen, that's fine. I'm not here to punish you.
Right.
I'm just here to protect the value of the American dollar. The American dollar at the end of the day has to mean something. So, that's an example. I was willing to listen to Universal. I was willing to listen to parking garages where, it might not be practical to take cash. But, there's a difference between listening to people's honest grievances
Right.
and giving them some daylight. There's a difference between that and having lobbyists write your bills for you.
Yeah, for their special interests. So on the cash
Absolutely.
one, and it's actually Bernie Jacques that came up with this, and he said that because of, I don't know if it was your bill, but the business owners were like, no, I'm a private business. You can't force me to take cash. And
Yeah,
he's like, and this is, I think it's brilliant. All government sector public entities must accept cash.
that's right.
Right? Government
Right.
sector. There's no private businesses there because I mentor kids at high schools. These kids, and this all started during COVID, these kids, they can't buy a ticket to prom or a concert or a football game and use cash. They can't do
Right.
it. And a lot
Right.
of kids, first of all, 4% of Floridians are unbanked or underbanked. The disabled, the elderly, and, Blacks, Hispanics are typically unbanked or underbanked. And there's a lot of, you want to give your kid a credit card to go buy something? No. And again, it's not right and it's not fair. However, every single transaction gets charged 95 cents. So somebody somewhere is making a lot of money on it. So I
Right.
was talking to, and I tried to get that one last year, but I guess I was late to the game. But it's like, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. All government sector or government public sector entities, government, as in all the public schools, which also includes the colleges, which also includes the college stadiums, because, you need to be able to pay cash, period.
Right. Right. And Saga, that actually illustrates perhaps another schism in the Republican Party is this idea of, exactly how does our economic system work? Because you mentioned an idea that I ran up against with my cash bill, right? Apparently, we nowadays have Republicans who either haven't held a job, haven't run a business, but we have these Republicans who somehow think that they're beating their chest saying they're loyal Republicans because I refuse to tell businesses how to run their practice. Listen, you obviously haven't run a business because government tells me how
Right.
to run my business every single day. Saga, because of the size of my clinic, I must carry workers' comp insurance. That costs me money.
Right.
I'd rather not carry it. I am forced to carry it by the government. I'd rather not have a ramp outside my clinic that's at a certain angle. The ramp outside my clinic had to be repaved about 4 different times until we got the angle right. And again, it's not that I was out there measuring the angle of the ramp. The government made me do that. So this notion, it's this younger generation of Republicans. They seem to think that Republican economics is somehow law of the jungle, that it's the Wild West. You can do whatever you want if you're a business owner. That's not true.
Well, I
What
think it's a
tr-
little bit more nefarious than that.
Exactly. What true capitalism means playing by the rules.
Yep.
And yes, there is a rule book, unfortunately. For those Republicans that think it's law of the jungle, to each their own. No, there must be a rule book, and it's up to us to enforce it, and it's up to us to make it fair. And I think requiring cash is well within our rights as a government.
Right. And again, especially to start with government public sector entities. I think that's a great place because
100%.
nobody can say,
Absolutely.
well, private business. And I think it's a little bit more nefarious than that because it's not like, oh, you can't tell me what to do because I may be wrong here. I don't know. However, the company that's making that 95 cents per purchase, maybe they're paying these guys a lot. Maybe they're taking them to dinners. I don't know. I
Right,
don't know.
right,
I
right.
do know that it's not fair and it's not right because you are disenfranchising 4% of our population.
Right.
Additionally, and I don't think people understand or respect the gravity of the situation of this whole digital control grid. And
Yeah.
I point people back to the Canadian truckers
Yes.
because they wanted to protest. So the government of Canada shut them down totally financially. Not only them, any friend that went to help them, to bring them a sandwich, to help them buy gas, anything else, they also got shut down. So if they can put everything digital, everything digital, everything digital, all your payments, everything else, and try to eliminate cash more and more, they will control you more and more and more. And I think it was over in Sweden, somewhere over there, they tried to go totally cashless, and they
Mhm.
got down because cash was usually, around 8 to 11% in use, and they got it down to 3%, and then they saw the storms and the hurricanes here, and oh my goodness, and
Mhm.
then thankfully, the prime minister was like, "Oh, no, we need to start using cash more." So they
Mhm.
nixed that, and now they're trying to inject more cash in because, again, cash is not only does it protect our privacy, it also protects our freedoms because you can track every single little itty bitty thing that you do with a credit card. Oh, here's your statement. Here's this, that, and the other. You cannot track with cash. They don't know where I spend that money
Right.
because if it gets to it, and it may sound dystopian, however, there are countries in the world this is happening. China is one of them where it's like, so Joel, we think you've eaten enough meat this month,
Right.
so
Right.
your money is only good to buy bugs.
You're exactly right.
And it's
100%.
and it's like when Brett Bauer went with Trump over to China and his taxi driver couldn't find a spot to park to let him off, so stopped there and then, got him out with his bags. 4 minutes later, he had a ticket on his phone. The taxi driver did. The other thing in China is homelessness is growing, and the reason it's growing is because they are under total 100% surveillance. So these college kids that say something or write something or talk about something that goes against the government, they are totally shut off. They can't buy food. They can't pay their rent. They can't go home. They can't use transportation. They are literally dying, starving to death on the streets because also anyone who helps them, brings them a sandwich, brings anything, the same thing will happen to them. And that is part of the total control grid. So that's why, and I'm not saying you have to use cash for everything. I personally do. I keep it going. If a place of business doesn't take cash, I turn around and walk out.
Well,
That's me.
and
That's capitalism.
that's your right as a consumer. I mean, you're
Right.
exactly right. There are some transactions that I want a receipt of. The things
Yeah.
that I write off for my medical clinic, for my
Right.
medical, I would like a hard copy of that. I would like to use a credit card because it's easier to itemize that. It's easier to say, all right, well, where did I get my medical supplies from? Got them from right here. Here's the receipt. But like you say, when I'm going to the movies, when I'm buying a bag of popcorn,
I
I
know.
don't need a digital trail right now because all the
They're
money
going to
I
say you've had
withdrew.
too much popcorn this month. No more
Yeah,
popcorn for
exactly.
you.
Because no one took my cash this 4th of July weekend, now there is a digital trail of everything I did this weekend, and that
Hmm.
can be followed. You can know what I did at
It's tracing your
3:15 PM.
lifestyle.
Oh, it's terrible. And then Saga, not to mention that, all right, so that's the one thing. But let's be honest here. This whole idea of digitally following someone. This is an Obama era construction. You remember Obama's the one who changed the IRS rules. We are a broke country, Saga,
Yep.
and the sooner we accept that, the better. And look, it's okay. We're a huge country with a huge GDP. We can get out of this hole. But the point is, your IRS is now weaponized against you, the American
Exactly.
citizen. President Obama started this. He wanted a track of every hamburger you eat,
Yep.
every pair of shoes you buy. You know why, Saga?
Every
Because
big
now
gulp.
they know every nickel and every dime you are receiving as income. Before long, Saga, if this keeps up, if cash is no longer king and everything's done on a card, you know what? You won't need accountants anymore. You won't have to file your taxes because what will happen?
They'll take it.
April 15th, the government will tell you what you owe them. And if you don't give it to them, you go to prison. That's the dystopian future we're looking at. And that's why we need to protect people's privacy. That's
Yes.
why we need to protect their rights. And that's why I was always proud to stand for cash. They're doing this in other countries, by the way. When I go visit Britain, there's chip shops, where you buy fish and chips, where they will have signs in the wall saying, we are only cash because the government has no
Yes.
need to
Yes.
know what we're doing here.
Yeah, I was just over in Slovenia and Croatia, and the same thing. I could pay cash for everything there.
Yeah.
Now, this also what you were saying about the IRS. Now, here's the other kicker, is if we do get to that digital control grid, there will be no need for legislation.
Yeah, exactly.
And people don't
Exactly.
realize that either.
Yeah.
So,
If you don't
so
do
many
what's
things.
expected of you, they'll cut you off.
Yeah.
You won't be
Yeah.
able to buy a bus pass, much less, buy stocks.
I know. or a hot dog. Ay, ay, ay. So in any event, okay, so we've covered so many things now, and I want to get back to, again, being a grassroots person and being in the trenches with legislators such as yourself and other ones that I've been working with. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm an activist. And I work a lot with a lot of the health freedom people, and they've worked a lot with a lot of different legislatures, bringing them, because I'm also on the board of Citizens Council for Health Freedom. And what we do, that's more on a national level. I just want to button our state up here, Florida up, is go around and get in the trenches and talk with the legislatures and work with them. So we know from our perspective, being the grassroots, who is really for the people,
Right.
who is really there
Right.
with truly the constituents' best interest at heart, not, hey, who's going to line my pockets?
Right.
And I think that, and this is my perspective, to me, if a grassroots organization gives you an endorsement, that should hold far more weight than another politician or hey, I'll endorse you if you endorse me, and all these things. Because it seems like this past week, which I thought was really interesting, we had the debate, Patrick Bet David debate last week with Collins, Fishback, and Renner. And I thought it was very interesting that this past week, this like flood of endorsements came in for Donalds. And I'm like, and these are people that it's like, hey, I know you. I like what you've been doing, but I don't understand how you could endorse someone that's a criminal.
Right.
So I don't understand that.
So I think the term that a lot of people are used to is quid pro quo. You know, people hear that and they think, oh, I don't like that. Well, you know, it happens all the time in Tallahassee. In Tallahassee, you want to be associated with a winner, not a loser. I'll give you a good example, Saga. You know, each class picks their leader for who will be Speaker of the House in their year.
Mm-hmm.
Back in my time, I picked Representative Jessica Baker. I supported Jessica Baker. Ultimately, our Speaker of the House will be Jennifer Kennedy. So I guess you could say I was on the wrong end of that deal. But again, I supported someone I believed in. I
Right.
didn't support someone who had the numbers. I didn't support the leading horse in the race. That would have been Kennedy.
Right.
I actually had other representatives call me to say, hey, if you want a good chairmanship, hey, if you want to help shape healthcare policy for the state of Florida, you better get on the winning team.
Isn't
You know,
that sad?
so there's no such thing in Tallahassee as doing the right thing. Now, you know, I've never said an unkind word about Jennifer. Jennifer's a great human being.
Right.
It's just that I was in a foxhole with Jessica Baker. She and I served on multiple committees together. I got to see her grace under pressure. So once I gave someone, Saga, my word that I would support them, how bad would I feel to break that word and then say, no, Kennedy's going to win. I'm with her. So in
Right.
the end, Saga, I'd like to think that both ladies appreciated my stance. I'd like to think that Jessica appreciated me
Mm-hmm.
sticking with her through thick and thin, even when it was obvious she was not going to be the victor. But I
Right.
also like to think that Jennifer Kennedy respected me as well, to know that I couldn't be bought. You know, I wasn't going to be a fair weather fan. I wasn't going to drop someone at the drop of a hat just
Right.
because the tide was against them. And I think people respect that. I think people respect you when you stand up for your principles, not when you sway with the wind.
Right. And just because you don't vote for somebody or don't support somebody doesn't mean that you hate the other person.
Exactly.
When I was running for mayor, one of the former mayors actually endorsed me. And the
Right.
current mayor called and was like, "What are you doing? I thought you liked me." And he said, "I do like you. I like you as a friend. I don't agree with your politics."
Right. Right.
And it doesn't mean they can't be friends. It's different. This is not a game. People are treating it like a game. And again, 23 million people are affected by what's going on.
Right.
And it
Well,
it highly concerns me.
and this episode today, the show today is actually going to be an example of that, because before we're finished, I've stayed silent on the governor's race here in the state of Florida because people have been asking me for months, hey, who are you voting for when you go in that voting booth? And I've stayed silent because I have two really good friends
Mhm.
that are running for the same seat. But before we finish today, I'm going to break my silence. I'm going to endorse one of my two friends. And again, it's no slap in the face to the other.
No.
It's just that, again, there are certain things that I've noticed during the course of the election. There's certain things I've noticed that I appreciate.
Mhm.
There's certain things that really stand out to me. And so again, it's not a slap in the face to anyone. I would be happy if either one of my friends became governor of the state of Florida, but only one person can be governor. So
Right.
before your interview with me today is over, we're going to announce who I am endorsing for governor in the state of Florida. So there's a good
Well,
example of that.
I appreciate that because I've interviewed both Jay Collins and Paul Renner. And one of the bills that I was working on, was it last year? I've been working on so many for so long, but I was working with his office with. And with Renner, back when he was speaker, I got to know him really well because he was helping out with some issues that I was working on too. And with me, it's the same thing. It's not a personality thing. It's it's who I think is best fit to do the job we need done. And it's like if you're hiring somebody, I hired somebody for my business, and it's like, well, you're interview civil. It doesn't mean, oh, I hate you. It's just I don't think that your skill set is what I need to best forward my organization. And it's as
Right.
simple as that. It's not oh, I hate him. And even in my campaign when I was running, I was like, I don't want any negative. I don't want to be trash talking anyone. I don't want to run a campaign on mudslinging.
Right.
Because I don't respect that. And people are like, oh, but it's politics. Politics gets dirty. It's not personal. It's like, I understand that. I understand that's the norm. I'm talking about for me. You
Well,
do whatever you want, but I'm
well,
talking about for me. But I
well,
think we also need to look at, because you worked with both of them, didn't you?
absolutely. And Saga, let's be clear. I don't think anyone's expecting me to endorse Byron Donalds today
Correct.
because that is not going to happen. If anything, my endorsement is really more of an anti Byron Donalds sentiment. I think Byron Donalds is bad for the state of Florida. I particularly think he's bad for the Republican Party. Again, and this goes back to that schism I was referring to earlier. We have a schism in our party. Donald Trump and that whole movement. I'll even go back as far as the Tea Party movement. The
Yeah.
Republicans have become more of a grassroots party, and that is a good thing. We have a history now of listening to the people that our policies affect. And we
Hmm.
have certain new age Republicans like Ron DeSantis, like a Jay Collins, like a Paul Renner. We have this new wave of Republicans who are tapping into that grassroots. They are checking with you, the voter,
Hmm.
before they come up with principles and ideals. And that's what it was meant to be.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Byron Donalds represents the old guard. He represents the old Republicans, the Rick Scotts, the Kathleen Pasadomos, the Republicans who look down their noses at you, the Republicans who already have millions of dollars in the bank, the Republicans who already have private beaches and wonder why you get mad when they throw you off the beach. I call those country club Republicans.
Well,
They're
not only
waiting.
that, he's totally bought. I mean, if you look at
Oh,
who's
bought and sold,
sponsoring him,
bought and
it's
sold.
insane. It's the Seminole it's the casinos, the gambling. It's also there's a company called Geo Group, and Geo Group, they do private prisons. So when you build a private prison, you need to fill the beds. They're the ones that I know gave Danny Alvarez a lot of money last year and I don't know if it was just for this bill. However, I'm going to assume it was. What is it? HB 945, that would basically have made Florida worse than it would. We would have been enemy of the state because it was about what you're thinking, what you're memeing, what you're talking. And thankfully, it didn't fully
Right.
pass. But that company originally gave Byron Donalds 500,000 and they gave Jay 250,000 because they're hedging their bets.
Well,
Recently, they gave Donalds an additional 500,000.
and I'll go further than that, Saga. Byron Donalds is bought and sold for by the weed companies.
Yes,
So
that's true.
if you want Florida to become the next California or to become the next
Or
Colorado,
Colorado, right?
then Byron's your man because he is bought and sold by Trulieve, by the marijuana folks. Marijuana will be legal in the state of Florida. You won't be able to escape the smell. And
With
listen,
no guardrails.
it's not just that. That's one example.
Yeah.
Let's be perfectly clear. Byron Donalds, he is a fraud. He is not a true Republican. Byron Donalds has a criminal record. He was a prior drug dealer.
Yeah.
When he did serve as a member of my body in the Florida House of Representatives, he filed a bill to make shoplifting basically, you can't prosecute shoplifting if it's below a certain value amount. Again, California type principles. So shoplifting's okay as long as you don't take a big screen TV. It's like, are you kidding me? We
Yeah.
are a law and order state. Shoplifting is illegal, period. Byron Donalds also weighed in on all the George Floyd, Trayvon Martin
I know.
stuff.
When I was living in
So
Minnesota,
he's
then he was so wrong.
so if you want DEI to make a comeback in Florida, well, then Byron's your man.
Well, and
But
then also with the AI, with the data centers, the hyperscale data centers,
the data centers,
those companies have given him millions. And it's like, no, we don't want
He is
this.
bought and paid for by the special interests. He will turn your farms, he will turn your rural parts of the state
He'll
into
ruin us.
large data centers. And Saga, one of the things that I tell people who haven't had the luxury to travel abroad like I have, what separates America from Europe is the fact that we have all this space.
Yeah.
All this land, and so when I see our space taken up by solar farms with the disgusting solar panels, I warn people. I say, you can't do that to Florida. They're going to do the same thing with data centers if you vote for Byron Donalds. I refuse to support Byron Donalds.
Right. Okay. So now we know who we're both not supporting.
Exactly.
So let's go back. Yes. Let's circle back here. And we'll talk about, okay, you worked with both Collins and Renner.
Yeah.
So tell me your experiences with both.
So both very honest men, both very good men. I mean, you'd be proud to have him as your dad. You'd be proud to have him as your best buddy, So two really good folks. For me, I obviously know the speaker better. I know Paul Renner better. He was my Speaker of the House. So I got to see Paul in a leadership role. I got to experience our lieutenant governor back when he was a state senator. So my experience with Jay Collins was more as a collegial friendship type of thing. Whereas with Speaker Renner, it was more of almost like a father-son relationship. You got to run everything by the speaker. But they're both very honest men, both loyal Republicans. So again, if you disagree with my endorsement or if you disagree with my feeling on the matter, that's okay. I would be pleased if either man won. But make no mistake, Saga, what you're seeing in the last couple of weeks, all these state senators and state reps tripping over themselves endorsing Byron Donalds, they don't know Byron Donalds.
No, they don't.
And while I'm about to choose between my two favorite sons, do I like Paul Renner better or do I like Jay Collins better? Saga, how do you think Paul Renner feels right now, knowing that he had freshman representatives like myself? He had someone like, let's say, Kevin Steele. Okay. People who loved Speaker Renner, or they said they loved Speaker Renner, and then it turns out that all of these representatives turn around and endorse Byron Donalds. I mean, and I don't mean to single Kevin out. There's a list of about 30 or 40 of them.
I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed in so many
representatives who I'm friends with. And I thought that they loved Speaker Renner. I thought that they loved Jay Collins. And they are just knocking them both down to the ground, tripping over themselves to endorse this thug.
Yeah.
This gentleman who runs around with bad elements, this gentleman who has a criminal record. They are endorsing Byron Donalds and acting as if they never knew Paul Renner. They're acting as if they never knew Jay Collins.
In my world, in my little make-believe mind, that message is coming down from the top. I'll just say from the top. Okay,
Well,
because we
well,
know we
well, and
just
what it is, they're protecting their own self-interest.
right.
They are playing like it's like betting on a horse, right? They're looking at the odds makers and they're like, well, odds are Byron's going to win, so
Well,
I
you
want to be
also
sure.
said it was like with you. It's like, okay, well, you won't get this committee position unless you do
Yeah,
this.
yeah, exactly. So these representatives, they're thinking, boy, if he's the governor, I'd like to be lieutenant governor. I'd like to
Yeah.
be attorney general one day. I'd like to maybe be the head of DCF. I'd like to be the head of Health and Human Services. So they're all staking their bet, Saga. This has nothing to do with benefiting the state of Florida. It
Mm-mm.
has to do with benefiting those selfish state representatives and
Yep.
state senators. Those senators serve with Jay Collins. Why are they not endorsing Jay Collins? Shame on them. I served with Paul Renner. Shame on those representatives who are throwing Paul Renner into the ditch.
Well,
They
not
should be
only that,
ashamed of
all of them
themselves.
serve the constituents. And as a constituent, I want somebody there that has the experience, that's been there, done that, that has gone to bat against the grain, against the big people. Because I know it was back when Renner was in and they were trying to downgrade Florida's status or grade whatever for the financial stuff because
Yeah,
Florida didn't do enough DEI. And
right,
Renner was just, and this was like when he first got in, he's like, no. And they're like, what do
right,
you mean no? You have to do what we tell you. And he
right.
just stood up to him. He put his career, he put his job on the line right out of the bat. And he's like, no. And you know what? He won. So
Yeah.
I see that. And I just, like I say, with his background, with what all he's done and what he's been through. And again, Collins also, God bless him. I totally respect his work or his, being in the military. That's great.
Oh,
Both of them
absolutely.
have that.
Absolutely.
For me, Renner has, again, the Speaker of the House is the second highest position in the organizational chart, if you will, for the state of Florida. And with the incoming threats that we have, we need somebody that sees those threats coming in, has been there, done that, and is really well seasoned. So
Well, I tell
that's
you
where I
what,
stand.
I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore. Here on this episode, I am proud to announce that I officially endorse my former speaker, Paul Renner, to be your next governor of the state of Florida, Saga. And I'll tell you why I decided on Paul Renner. You know, Paul was the first one to throw his hat into the ring back when everyone was wondering, is Casey DeSantis going to run? Is Jay Collins going to, who's running? We all knew we didn't want Byron Donalds. We don't want a Byron Donalds run Florida. Paul was the first one to take up the challenge, and I've
You're
spoken to
right.
Paul Renner about this, and Paul saw it just as you and I saw it. He's like, no one was standing up and doing the right thing. He said, I didn't want to run, but doggone it, someone had to run because we
Mhm.
refused to have a Byron Donalds governorship. So I commend Paul for being the first to throw his hat into the ring. Second of all, Saga, there's also this issue of electability. You know,
Uh-huh.
I stayed quiet forever because I love both Jay Collins and Paul Renner. I respect Jay deeply. I think at the end of the day, we were all waiting perhaps for Governor DeSantis to weigh in. I think out of deference to the governor, I kept my mouth shut because, obviously, whoever the governor gets behind, that person's going to have a lot of wind in their sails. And just as much as this is about protecting Governor DeSantis's agenda and moving it forward, to me, it's also about not turning Florida over to Byron Donalds and,
Right.
and the cronies there. So to me, I was waiting for the governor to weigh in before I opened my mouth. It doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore as we get closer and closer to the primary. I truly believe the governor is going to sit this one out. Also, recently in the news and recently on Twitter, we have seen basically the governor's mouthpieces, people who have worked in his communications department, pretty much say as much. They've come out, they've made their preference known. Um, they have said some things about the lieutenant governor that makes it sound like an endorsement is not forthcoming.
Right.
So at that point, Saga, I figure I'm on my own. If I were in a foxhole, who would I want to trust the state to? And like I said, I've actually seen Paul Renner in that capacity. You know,
Uh-huh.
I've lived through hell the last 2 years because I've been on the outside of the Florida House looking in. I've watched the Florida House under the leadership of Danny Perez, and it has been a circus show.
It's
It
been
made me
painful.
appreciate Paul Renner that much more. Saga, when I first got to the House, I just assumed this is what good Republicans do. We follow good policy. We bring good policy through the process and we turn it into law. Danny Perez showed us that no, not just any Republican could do that. It takes a special Republican to lead this state. And
Mhm.
Paul Renner is that exceptional Republican. A lot of these DeSantis victories, now the ideas came from DeSantis. DeSantis is basically our leader in this ideology. Like I said, I am first and foremost a DeSantis disciple,
Mhm.
but I don't think a lot of those victories would have been possible under a Speaker Danny Perez. I think it took the guts of someone like a Speaker Paul Renner. Saga, even the Florida Senate is way more moderate than the House.
Right.
If not for Paul Renner in the Florida House, a lot of those DeSantis ideas would have been watered down to the point where you wouldn't have recognized them. So again, I give Paul Renner a lot of credit, and it's because of that grace under pressure. It's because of that leadership under fire, knowing how to lead 120 members, my goodness, and to get the policy on point. That's why I feel confident that, look, if I'm going to go down swinging, I'm going to go down swinging with Paul Renner.
Well, God bless you. I greatly, greatly appreciate that. I think a lot of people need to hear that. I think you're also, from your perspective, you are very well respected also and treasured, as you know. And I think that your endorsement means quite a bit to quite a few people because, like I said, the grassroots and the people whose endorsement actually costs them something is worth far more weight than another official. It's like
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
even Trump. It's like because how many people in Florida? It's like, no, I don't care if Trump endorsed him or not. And I think that, and I really appreciate you speaking up and saying all that because your perspective, you worked with him. And like I say, it holds a lot of weight because you understand working in the trenches. And that's why I really want to give a super big shout out to the grassroots organizations and the people that are not in it for personal gain, that speak up and endorse. I think those are the people that more the general public should be listening to.
Well, and let's be clear, Paul Renner did not pay for this endorsement. I
No.
wish he did. I could use the check, but
Well, if Paul Renner would have sold out, he would have had a lot more money in his coffers than he does now.
amen. Paul hasn't promised me anything. I have not spoken to Mr. Speaker since I interviewed him back earlier this year. So again, this is not something that was solicited. This is not something. This is not an example of a quid pro quo. Look, if I wanted to be Surgeon General, like I said, all the odds makers are saying I should back Byron Donalds. In the end, principles matter.
Yeah.
In the end, we have to do the right thing. God forbid, whatever it means to us personally, we have to look out for the best interests of Florida. And let me just share this story with you about Speaker Renner because it stays with me to this day. The first time I ever met Speaker Renner, it was a welcome to Tallahassee moment. They bring in all the incoming freshman Republicans, and they had us at like I don't know, it's like a farm kind of environment, just right there on the outskirts of Tallahassee. We were having kind of a hoedown, like a little barbecue meal, some country music playing, and I'm nervous. I'd never met the speaker before. We're all there. I'm a newbie. I see him waiting in line, for his potato salad or whatever. It's a buffet. I get my plate, and I'm there, putting brisket on my plate. I go up to him real serious, Mr. Speaker, listen, you've got to know I was sent here by the people of District 3 because we need our Second Amendment rights back. The Parkland bill that Rick Scott signed back in the Republicans who took our rights away, we need them back, Mr. Speaker, and I'm here to deliver that message. And you know what, Saga? He could have blown me off. He could have looked at me and said, "Who the hell are you?" He could have said, "Well, you're a freshman. Get out of here." Do you know what Paul Renner said to me in line at the barbecue table?
What?
He turned to me like one common man to another. And he said, "You know what, Dr. Rudman?" He said, "We've regretted that ever since." He says, "If it's the last thing I do, I'm going to change that rule." He says, "I'm with you." He says, "Let's work together to change that." He says, "I've been wanting to change that for a long time." So here's a guy, it's just like talking to your neighbor. It's just
Mhm.
like talking to your friend at the Republican Executive Club meeting. It's just like he was so down to earth and so calm. Actually, the first time I spoke to Speaker Renner was on the phone. We originally had a meet and greet in Tallahassee where he wanted to welcome all the new Republicans and tell us how the whole thing works. Well, I had booked tickets to the U.S. Open in Flushing Meadows. My wife and I were big tennis fans, and to thank my wife for letting me run for office, I was taking her to the U.S. Open. And wouldn't you know, it was the same weekend as our earlier get together. So my actual first encounter with Speaker Renner was over the phone. And I had to call him to say, "Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to be able to make your event, sir. I'm sorry. My wife comes first. I've promised her this trip." And again, do you know what the incoming speaker said to me? He said, "You are absolutely right. Family does come first. This can wait."
Mhm.
So that's the kind of man
Yeah.
that I'm supporting. And you know what, Saga? Another thing I would recommend people do, get out there and watch YouTube clips. Get out there
Yeah.
and follow follow Jay Collins on Instagram, follow Paul Renner on Instagram, on Twitter. What I've noticed here lately, whether it's flock cameras, whether it's data centers, whether it's medical freedom, I always look for the candidates who's who I hear my words coming out of their mouth.
Mhm.
It happens almost 99% of the time with Ron DeSantis. That's why everyone loves Ron DeSantis, because it's common sense conservatism.
Right.
Paul Renner here in the last 2 months has really made a lot of sense
Yeah.
regardless of the issue. He has a strong command of all the issues. And again, I think I hear my words coming out of Speaker Paul Renner's mouth, and I love it. He gets it, ladies and gentlemen. He knows what you're up against. He knows the cost of beef in your grocery stores. He
Mhm.
knows the cost of your mortgage. He knows where we can do better as a state. He knows you don't want to sacrifice your freedom in order to have a little bit more security. He gets it. He will protect your freedoms. And he is the gentleman who will continue the DeSantis agenda, and not only continue it, Saga, he'll expand on it.
He will absolutely expand it. He's got little kids, so he's all about parental rights and, family rights and all that. I 100% agree with you. And thank you. Thank you. I am honored that you chose my little show here to make that announcement on. I just think it's absolutely wonderful. I thank you. Thank you. I hope everybody takes your heartfelt endorsement and expands on it. So I greatly appreciate that, Joel.
Well, and again, I'm not so big headed as to think I'm going to change anybody's mind, but I'm asking you to just follow Speaker Renner on one of the socials. When he pops up on your Instagram every morning and you hear him speak, I think you'll learn about the gentleman that I had the pleasure of serving with. And again, no disrespect intended to Jay Collins. I think he would make a great governor as well. But first and foremost, we have to defeat Byron Donalds.
Yeah.
Okay. This is our primary as Republicans. If the Republicans don't put forward a good candidate, we are going to lose this election. I'm warning you now. A Governor David Jolly, Democrat David Jolly, it's not far fetched. It will happen if you nominate Byron Donalds. We must nominate a true Republican, a true conservative, and Speaker Renner, Paul Renner, is that man.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Thank you very, very much, Joel. Thank you.
Thanks,
Uh,
Saga. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on today. And
my pleasure.
thank you for turning the tables on me. Like I said, normally it would be me interviewing you. So it was neat to kind of be a guest. I miss those days, and I'm so glad that people like you still respect what I say.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? Absolutely. Far more than you realize. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. Bye bye.
Bye bye.